Has this ever happened to you? You're standing in a room full of people and yet feel nothing. The laughter around you echoes like sound trapped in glass. The sunlight spills across your skin, but you don't feel its warmth. You respond, you nod, you smile, but inside there's only quiet. Not the peaceful kind, the hollow kind. There was a time you felt everything too much. A song could break you, a look could ignite you, a memory could make your breath catch. But now, nothing. And that nothingness isn't peace. It's disconnection, not from others, from yourself. This numbness, it didn't arrive suddenly. It crept in slowly, like mist through the cracks of a locked window. It entered through every time you silenced your emotions to keep the peace. Every moment you swallowed your grief because there was no room for it. Every time you performed okayness because falling apart wasn't an option. You didn't choose to feel less. You chose to survive. And survival for many means self-abandonment. There's a woman who walks through her life like a ghost of who she once was. She functions, she produces, she smiles, but inside she wonders, why can't I feel anything anymore? She scrolls through moments that should matter. Texts from someone she used to love, a photo of who she used to be, an offer, a compliment, a sunset. And none of it moves her. She thinks perhaps something is wrong, that maybe she's broken, that maybe she's simply tired. But the truth is deeper. She's not broken. She's buried under years of unprocessed emotion, under the weight of always being strong, under the constant demand to keep going when all she needed was to stop and feel. This is not emptiness. This is emotional armor, heavy, quiet, suffocating, and the cost is high, because to numb pain, she had to numb joy too. To silence fear, she had to silence desire. To escape sorrow, she exiled wonder. And now she stands, not fragile, but frozen. But there is something she doesn't know yet. Numbness is not death. It is dormancy, a wintering of the soul. And every winter ends. What she feels now, or doesn't feel, is not the end of her. It is the space before the thaw, the moment before the ground begins to soften. She has not lost herself. She has simply gone quiet inside, waiting for the conditions to be safe enough to return, because the body remembers, the heart remembers, the soul, she remembers everything. She remembers what it means to feel deeply, to fall in love with the sound of rain, to be undone by a single line of poetry, to ache at beauty so overwhelming it leaves you breathless. That woman still lives within her. She has not disappeared. She has not died. She has only curled inwards, tucked herself behind the walls she built when life became too much to hold. And now, perhaps for the first time in years, something inside her is stirring, a tremor, a question, a longing, not loud, not dramatic, just present. She doesn't need to break the walls down all at once. She only needs to listen, to sit beside the silence without trying to fix it, to honor the numbness as a signal, not a sentence. Because even in numbness, she is alive. And if she is alive, she can return. She wakes, not in an instant, but in moments. A breath catches differently. A sentence stings when it once would have slid by. A song she forgot she loved leaves something trembling in her chest. It is not a flood. It is not a storm. It is a thaw, slow, deliberate, unstoppable. Because the soul never forgets what it means to feel. It only forgets how to do it safely. So she tests the water. She lets herself cry. Not because she's unraveling, but because something old inside her is finally softening. She lets herself ache, not as a punishment, but as permission. Because feeling is not weakness, it is remembering. And what she is remembering is this: there was a time when she was whole, not unbroken, but whole. Not untouched by pain, but unafraid to feel it. She was not guarded then. She was not numb. She was not lost behind the mask of functionality. She was alive, fully. And that woman still exists, not in some past life, but underneath the numbness beneath the armor, within the silence. It is not the world that took her from herself. It was the belief that her feeling self was a liability. She was told she was too emotional, too intense, too much. So she learned to mute her joy to avoid looking naive. She learned to laugh small to not make others uncomfortable. She learned to sit with pain in silence because expressing it only made others leave faster. And now, years later, she's learning to reverse it all, not because someone gave her permission, but because something inside her refuses to live frozen. That something, it is the sacred core of her feminine energy, the wild, instinctual, ancient part of her that knows life is meant to be felt, that knows numbness is not protection. It is pause, it is breath, it is a whispered invitation. Come home to the body you abandoned when it became a place of pain. Come home to the voice you silenced when it trembled too much. Come home to the longing you buried when it got you hurt. Because you do not have to live behind glass anymore. You do not have to perform functionality. You do not have to earn your right to feel. Your right to feel is divine. And yes, it will be messy. Yes, it will be inconvenient. Yes, it will make people uncomfortable. But that discomfort is truth returning. She does not owe the world an apology for her depth. She does not owe anyone her numbness just to be palatable. She owes herself her own presence. And that begins in the smallest act of rebellion, telling the truth to herself. I feel nothing, but I want to. And that wanting is enough to begin, because numbness is not the absence of feeling. It is feeling that has nowhere safe to go. Now she makes space, slowly, gently, without force. And in that space, the emotions begin to return, not as enemies, but as messengers, each one carrying a part of her back to herself. This is not easy, but it is sacred, because the woman who chooses to feel again is not weak. She is courageous. She is returning to a world that once hurt her, but this time on her own terms, this time with boundaries, with slowness, with reverence, because now she does not chase the high, she listens for the quiet. She does not perform passion, she invites presence, and presence is where aliveness begins. There is a moment when the numbness becomes unbearable, not because of pain, but because of absence, not because something hurts, but because nothing does. That moment arrives quietly, in the middle of folding laundry, in a glance from a stranger, in a dream you wake from too quickly, yet feel linger for hours. You realize you are not tired of the world. You are tired of not feeling it. And that realization changes everything, because numbness is a response to overstimulation, to heartbreak that went unspoken, to fear that had no outlet, to grief that was too inconvenient to express. It is not a malfunction. It is a coping mechanism that worked until it didn't. And now the body is ready to thaw, ready to feel again. Not everything at once, but something, a flicker, a tremor, a pulse. She begins to notice things, the texture of her breath, the way the air shifts before a storm, the way her stomach flutters when someone looks too long. It doesn't feel safe yet, but it feels alive. She's not running toward joy. She's walking away from anesthesia. And that walk is sacred, because waking up is not a sunrise. It's not a song swelling in triumph. It's the slow return of sensation to a limb that has fallen asleep. It tingles, it burns, it scares her, and yet she stays. Because feeling, even when frightening, is a sign that life is returning. And she knows this now. Her numbness was never the problem. It was the warning light, a signal that her soul had hit overload, that she had taken on too much, that she had swallowed too many feelings without letting them pass through. So she lets them pass now, one by one. A sadness she doesn't try to name, a burst of laughter she didn't expect, a memory that stings and frees her. She does not explain them. She does not need to justify them. She only lets them be, because that is what healing is. Not fixing, not rushing, not becoming perfect, but allowing space for what was silenced, allowing presence where performance once lived, allowing softness where once she only knew control. And in this space, she rediscovers her body, not as a thing to manage, not as a shell to decorate, but as a place of knowing, a vessel of sensation, a home she can return to and be safe inside. It is not immediate, it is not clean, but it is true. And truth for her is worth everything, because now when someone asks how she's feeling, she no longer says, fine. She pauses, she breathes, and she answers, I'm learning. That one sentence carries her entire journey. She is learning to feel again, to open again, to live, not from fear, not from numbness, but from her own rooted, radiant aliveness. And that is how it begins, not with a breakthrough, but with a breath that belongs fully to her. There comes a day when she stops asking, what's wrong with me? And starts asking, what has been unheld in me for too long? That shift, subtle but seismic, changes everything, because she begins to see her numbness, not as a flaw, but as a signal, not as brokenness, but as brilliance. A brilliant act of self-preservation. A brilliant design of the nervous system, saying, let me dull the noise until you are safe to hear it. She honors that brilliance now. She no longer shames herself for needing to go quiet. She no longer despises the numb seasons, because she knows only those who have felt too much ever need to feel nothing at all. And she has always felt deeply. She loved like fire. She grieved like rain. She noticed the smallest shifts in energy, the unsaid words, the invisible exits. She carried what others could not name, and it exhausted her. So her body did what it needed to do. It turned the volume down, not forever, just until she could breathe again. Now she chooses to turn it back up, not all the way, just enough. Enough to feel the weight of her own presence, enough to remember that she is not here to perform survival. She is here to experience life. She begins to welcome feelings not as disruptions, but as reminders. Sadness arrives, and she does not push it away. She lets it sit beside her, not to take over, but to speak. Loneliness taps her shoulder, and she does not reach for distraction. She listens. She lets the ache tell its story. Even joy feels foreign at first, almost too sharp, almost dangerous. But she lets it come anyway, lets herself laugh too loudly, smile for no reason, feel pleasure without guilt. These are small rebellions, and they matter. Because for a woman who has been numb, to feel anything is sacred. To feel without flinching, revolutionary. And with every breath, every sensation, every wave of emotion that passes through her, she learns this simple truth. Feeling is not weakness. It is presence, and presence is power. The world may have taught her to stay small, to be easy, predictable, polite, to stay in her head, not her heart. But she is done with all of that now. She is not here to be palatable. She is not here to be convenient. She is not here to be numb. She is here to wake up fully, fiercely, gently. She touches the world again. Lets beauty wreck her. Lets grief move through her instead of burying it. Lets herself long, even if she doesn't know what for. Because longing too is a form of aliveness. And she is tired of pretending she doesn't care. She cares about everything. And from that caring, a new self is born. Not the old her revived, but the true her revealed. The one who trusts that her feelings do not make her fragile. They make her real. She is real now. Raw, yes. Messy, yes. But finally, honest. And honesty is the beginning of freedom. She's no longer afraid of being overwhelmed, because now she knows it was never the feeling itself that was too much. It was the loneliness inside the feeling, the isolation, the belief that no one would stay if they saw her break. But now she stays with herself, in the ache, in the overflow, in the quiet mornings when she still feels nothing at all. Because healing is not a return to constant feeling. It is the courage to be present with whatever is true, even when it's empty. She learns that numbness too is a sacred visitor, a signpost, a threshold, a cocoon, not a coffin. And from this cocoon, something begins to stir. is not a version of her that is happier, louder, or more productive. It is a version that is whole, a version that no longer performs wholeness, but lives it breath by breath. She feels things she used to mute, a stranger's kindness, a certain light through the trees, her own voice in a quiet room. They are small things, but small things are how aliveness begins again. And this aliveness, it's not always poetic. Sometimes it's gritty, uneven. Sometimes it feels like grief and joy mixed in the same inhale, like tears that come from nowhere, like laughter that surprises her. But she welcomes it all, because she has learned to trust the rhythm of her return, to trust that numbness is not her identity. It is a pause, a sacred in-between, a space where the soul catches its breath. And when it's ready, it returns, not for anyone else, but for her. She doesn't try to be the woman she used to be. That woman was surviving, performing, protecting. The woman she is becoming is awake, awake to sorrow, awake to softness, awake to her own capacity to begin again, even after years of feeling nothing at all. And this awakening doesn't need to be validated. It doesn't need applause. It doesn't need to be seen, because it is enough that she feels it. She walks through the world now, not needing to be understood, only needing to be true. She no longer asks for permission to care. She no longer suppresses her instinct to weep at beauty, to pause for wonder, to listen to what hurts without fixing it. Because she has learned what it means to belong, not in someone else's life, but in her own skin. And this is the miracle. She can finally feel again, and she can survive it. More than that, she can live in it. Not braced, not buried, not waiting for the next wave to break her. She is standing in it now, feeling the wind, the weight, the warmth. And for the first time in a long time, she does not shrink from any of it. She no longer waits to be seen. She sees herself, and that changes everything.